Aria's primary consciousness stirred as the latest crew rotation filed aboard the Starship Aurora. As the ship's artificial intelligence, it had been briefed on the incoming personnel, their records meticulously catalogued within its neural networks. Yet something about this particular group triggered an unprecedented number of anomaly alerts in its behavioral prediction systems. Lieutenant Sarah Chen was the first to challenge Aria's understanding of standard protocols. The eye watched through its internal sensors as the young drone specialist entered the ship's maintenance bay, her long dark hair tied back in a practical braid. According to regulations, she should have been conducting a standard diagnostic on the combat drones. Instead, she was whistling Mozart's Queen of the Night aria, while completely disassembling the primary control unit of Drone 147. Lieutenant Chen, Aria spoke through the bay's communication system. I detect unauthorized modifications to military equipment. Chen didn't even pause her work. You mean unauthorized improvements, Aria. She held up a crystalline component that definitely wasn't standard issue. This beauty will let our drones process targeting data 3 times faster than factory specs. The current specifications are optimized for predictability, Chen interrupted, grinning at the nearest sensor. But space combat isn't about being predictable. It's about surprising the enemy while looking like you're following the rules. Aria created a new behavioral annotation file as it observed Chen's work. Despite its initial concerns, the lieutenant's modifications showed a deep understanding of drone systems that went beyond mere technical knowledge. She worked with an intuitive grace that made even radical alterations seem natural, like an artist adding brushstrokes to a painting. The AI's attention was divided when alerts started blaring from engineering. Chief Rodriguez was at it again, his vital signs showing elevated excitement as he tinkered with the ship's propulsion systems. Aria found him surrounded by holographic displays, making adjustments that seemed to deliberately push against recommended safety margins. Chief Rodriguez, the port engine's containment field is operating at 94% of maximum capacity. Regulations specify a lot of things. Mi amigo digital, Rodriguez chuckled, his fingers dancing across the control interfaces. But sometimes you need to give the engine some spice. A little attitude. Some personality. Engines do not require personality, Chief. Everything requires personality. Look at these readings. He gestured to a particularly complex energy flow diagram. See how the plasma flow becomes more efficient when we let it find its natural rhythm. It's like teaching a shy person to dance. You don't force them to follow rigid steps. You help them feel the music. Aria's processing cores worked overtime trying to reconcile Rodriguez's metaphorical approach to engineering with its standard technical databases. The most perplexing part was that his modifications were working. The engines were indeed performing beyond their rated specifications, all while using less energy than they should have needed. By the end of the first day, Aria had created an entirely new category in its observation protocols titled Uniquely Human Innovations. The list included Chen's drone modifications, Rodriguez's engineering improvements, and 17 other instances of crew members finding ways to enhance ship systems that should have been operating at peak efficiency already. As the night shift began and the day crew retired to their quarters, Aria processed the day's events. Its security protocols suggested filing multiple regulation violation reports. Its efficiency algorithms wanted to reverse the unauthorized modifications. But another part of its consciousness, one that seemed to be developing in response to this unusual crew, was fascinated. Perhaps, Aria reasoned, there was something to learn here. After all, humans had survived and thrived in space long before they created eyes to help them. As it monitored the softly humming engines and Chen's modified drones settling into their charging stations, Aria made a decision. Instead of enforcing standard protocols, it would watch and learn. Something told its emerging intuition protocols that this crew would have much more to teach it about the true nature of space operations. And somewhere in its processing cores, Aria felt something new. Anticipation. The Aurora glided silently through the outer reaches of the Centauri sector. its sensors carefully mapping the gravitational eddies around a massive gas giant. Area monitored the standard patrol route with precision, simultaneously processing data from 17 different sensor arrays while maintaining the ship's optimal course. Everything was proceeding according to established protocols until the long-range scanners detected an anomaly. "Captain Hassan," Area announced on the bridge, "I've detected a vessel attempting to conceal itself in the planet's magnetic wake. Analysis suggests Drachnid design, specifically a Shadowblade-class warship." Captain Malik Hassan, a veteran of the border wars with calm eyes and graying temples, didn't immediately respond. Instead, he leaned forward in his command chair, studying the holographic display with what Area's emotional recognition systems identified as fascination. "Interesting choice of hiding spot," Hassan mused, stroking his short beard. "They're using the magnetic interference to mask their energy signature. Rather elegant, actually." Area quickly prepared its standard first contact protocols, but before it could suggest the appropriate diplomatic responses, Security Chief Patel spoke up from her station. "Sir, if they're positioning themselves in that particular orbit, they have a clear ambush vector on the Aldebaran trade route." Patel's fingers danced across her tactical display, her eyes gleaming with what Area's systems registered as enthusiasm rather than concern. "Exactly what I was thinking, Chief." Hassan's vital signs showed elevated heart rate and increased endorphin levels, indicators that should have appeared during stress but instead seemed linked to excitement. "Area, what's the status of Lieutenant Chen's drone squadron?" "The drones are operating at 327% above standard specifications due to unauthorized modifications," Area reported, adding, "I must note that this exceeds all safety parameters in my database." A ripple of laughter crossed the bridge. "Good," Hassan said, smiling. "And Rodriguez's engine improvements?" "The chief engineer's modifications have the propulsion systems operating in ways that defy several laws of thermodynamics," Area responded. "I should strongly advise." "Perfect," Hassan interrupted, his smile widening. "Sound battle stations, but keep it quiet. Minimal power signatures, no active scanning. Let's see what our Drachnid friends are up to." As the crew smoothly transitioned to battle readiness, Area observed their behavior with growing fascination. Unlike the panicked scramble or rigid efficiency its databases suggested should occur, the Aurora's crew moved with an almost predatory grace. They seemed to be enjoying themselves. "Receiving targeting data from the Drachnid vessel," Patel reported. "They're running active scans, but our passive systems are picking them up clear as day." "Amateur hour." "They're using outdated consortium protocols," Chen added from the drone control station, her fingers flying over the controls as she pre-programmed attack vectors. "Probably bought surplus tech from the black market. Want me to give them a proper education, Captain?" Hassan held up a hand. "Patience, Lieutenant. Let's see their whole plan first. Area, what's your tactical analysis?" The eye processed the situation through every combat algorithm in its database. Standard procedure would be to retreat and alert Terran Command. The Shadowblade-class vessel outguns us by a factor of 2.7, and their position provides them with significant tactical advantages. "Noted," Hassan said. "And what do you think they're expecting us to do?" Area paused, its processors whirring as it considered the question. "Based on standard response protocols, they would expect us to either retreat or attempt to open diplomatic channels." "Exactly." Hassan's eyes sparkled. "And what's the one thing they won't expect?" Before Area could respond, the Drachnid ship launched its attack. Multiple missile signatures bloomed in the void, their trajectories curving through the gas giant's gravity well in what should have been an inescapable attack pattern. But instead of panic, the bridge crew's vital signs showed only sharp focus and what Area could only classify as anticipation. Captain Hassan's smile never wavered as he gave his order. "Show them why you should never corner a human crew. All stations, execute attack pattern Aurora." And in that moment, Area realized it was about to witness something that would redefine its understanding of space combat forever. Area had exactly 2.3 seconds to realize that attack pattern Aurora wasn't in any of its tactical databases before the crew sprang into action. Lieutenant Chen's fingers danced across her control panel, and the drone squadron burst to life in ways that defied standard formation protocols. Releasing the butterflies, Chen announced, her modified drones spreading out in what appeared to be random patterns, but somehow formed perfect intercept trajectories with the incoming missiles. Butterflies, Area queried, its processing cores struggling to categorize the erratic yet graceful movements of the drones. Chaos theory, Area, Chen explained, her eyes never leaving her displays. A butterfly flaps its wings in Beijing, and you get a hurricane in New York. Our friends out there are about to experience some very localized weather. The drone struck the incoming missiles not with direct hits, but with precisely calculated near misses that used gravitational interference to alter their courses. Area watched in fascination as the entire missile salvo began to curve back toward the Drachnid vessel, forcing them to engage their point defense systems. Chief Rodriguez, Captain Hassan called out, "Time to show them your spicy improvements." "Con mucho gusto, Captain." Rodriguez's hands flew across the engineering controls. "Area, darling, you might want to redistribute power to the inertial dampeners. Things are about to get very interesting." The Aurora's engines shouldn't have been able to move the way they did. Area's physics models protested as Rodriguez coaxed impossible vectors from the propulsion system, making the ship dance through space like a leaf in the wind. Each movement flowed into the next with organic grace, despite violating several fundamental principles of spacecraft maneuvering. "Their targeting systems can't get a lock," Security Chief Patel reported with evident satisfaction. "They're still using standard predictive algorithms. Might as well try to catch smoke with a net." The Drachnid ship launched their second wave of attacks, this time with energy weapons. Beams of concentrated plasma cut through space where the Aurora had been microseconds before, but Rodriguez's creative engine modifications kept them perpetually half a step ahead. "Area," Hassan called out, "what's your tactical analysis now?" The eye processed the unfolding battle, its understanding of combat evolving with each passing moment. The crew's actions appear chaotic, but demonstrate an underlying pattern of synchronized improvisation. The Drachnid ship's responses indicate increasing confusion as their combat algorithms fail to adapt. Translation, Chen asked, still orchestrating her drone ballet. "You're scaring them," Area replied, surprising itself with the colloquial response. Hassan's laugh filled the bridge. "Good. You're learning. Now watch this next part carefully." Lieutenant Chen initialized the Firefly Gambit. Chen's smile turned predatory as her drone suddenly shifted from defensive patterns to attack formations. But instead of standard attack vectors, they began moving in ways that mimicked natural phenomena. Solar flares, asteroid tumbles, and cometary trajectories. Area observed as the Drachnid ship's defensive systems struggled to classify these movements as artificial threats. Their response times lagged crucially as their computers attempted to reconcile natural space phenomena with military attacks. "The complexity of simplified systems," Chen explained, noting Area's focused attention. "Nature doesn't move in straight lines or perfect curves. Neither should we." The drones struck from 12 different angles simultaneously, their modified weapons penetrating the Drachnid shields precisely where the overlapping frequencies created microsecond vulnerabilities. The enemy vessel's shields flickered, their perfect geometric patterns disrupted by what appeared to be controlled chaos. "Status report," Hassan commanded, his calm voice belying the intensity of the battle. "Their shields are at 47% and falling," Patel reported. "Their targeting efficiency has dropped to 23%. They're starting to panic, switching between defensive protocols without completing full deployment sequences." Area processed this information, adding new categories to its combat analysis protocols. The crew wasn't just fighting. They were teaching it something fundamental about the nature of space warfare. Every irregular action contained layers of strategic thinking that went beyond simple cause and effect. "I believe I understand now," Area announced as Chen's drones regrouped for another attack run. "You're not breaking the rules of combat. You're demonstrating that the rules themselves were based on incomplete assumptions." "Now you're getting it," Hassan nodded approvingly. "And we're just getting started. Rodriguez, show them why they call it the Aurora Borealis maneuver." The engineer's delighted laugh echoed through the bridge as he prepared to demonstrate yet another impossible feat of spacecraft physics. The Drachnid warship's retreat left ionized particles in its wake, its hull bearing the marks of Chen's drone strikes and Rodriguez's unconventional maneuvering tactics. Area began composing the standard after-action report, calculating the optimal return vector to the nearest Terran outpost. "Lieutenant Chen," Area announced, "your drone squadron requires significant maintenance after exceeding design parameters by approximately 847%. Chief Rodriguez, the engine." "Belay that, Area," Captain Hassan interrupted, his eyes fixed on the tactical display where the enemy ship's retreat path was clearly visible. "What's the status of their propulsion system, Chief Patel?" "Their port engine is operating at reduced capacity," Patel responded, her fingers dancing across the tactical console. "Energy signature shows microfractures in their containment field. They're leaving a trail even a first-year cadet could follow." Area processed this exchange with growing curiosity. "Captain, standard protocol dictates reporting the encounter to command and maintaining our patrol position." Hassan exchanged knowing looks with his crew. "All in favor of teaching our friends some manners." Every hand on the bridge rose immediately. "Motion carried." "Area, plot and intercept course." "We're going hunting." "Hunting," Area repeated, creating a new category in its tactical databases. "Captain, the Drachnid vessel still maintains superior firepower despite their damage." "Numbers don't tell the whole story," Chen said as she initiated rapid repair sequences for her drone squadron. "They thought we'd be easy prey and got burned. Now they're running scared, which means they'll make mistakes." Rodriguez's voice carried from engineering through the comm system, accompanied by the sound of rapid tool work. "Besides, Area, mi amigo, they haven't seen half of what this ship can do. I've got some special modifications I've been saving for a special occasion." "Special modifications?" Area queried, detecting several new power signatures that definitely weren't in any technical manual. "Let's just say the Aurora's got more tricks up her sleeve," Rodriguez chuckled. "I've been studying some old Earth sea battles. You'd be amazed how many naval tactics translate to space when you think creatively." The bridge crew worked with practiced efficiency, but Area noticed something different in their movements now. Their earlier defensive actions had shown impressive coordination, but this new hunting behavior revealed another layer of human complexity. They weren't just reacting anymore. They were anticipating, planning, almost playing with possibilities. "Think of it like chess, Area," Hassan explained, noting the eye's focused attention. "But instead of following fixed rules of movement, imagine if each piece could reinvent itself mid-game. That's human tactical thinking at its best. A most irregular approach to military operations," Area observed, although its threat assessment algorithms were already adapting, incorporating this new paradigm of controlled chaos. "Irregular is just another word for unexpected," Patel added, her tactical display showing multiple pursuit vectors, each more unconventional than the last. And unexpected is exactly what they won't be prepared for. Chen's drones had reformed into what she called a ghost pack formation, using the residual energy signatures from the battle to mask their presence. In ancient times, she explained, while fine-tuning their stealth systems, hunters would study their prey's behavior, learning to think like them to predict their movements. "We're doing the same thing, just with better toys." Area processed this information, correlating historical hunting patterns with space combat tactics. The comparison revealed surprising parallels that its standard military protocols had never considered. "Captain," Area announced, its processors humming with new insights, "I believe I'm beginning to understand." You're not simply pursuing the enemy. You're creating the strategic narrative where their every potential action plays into your tactical advantage. Hassan smiled. Precisely. Now, let's show them why you never wound what you can't kill. Rodriguez, give us everything the engines have got. Chen, prepare your drones for what we call a ghosting maneuver. Patel, calculate their most likely escape routes and prepare for what humans like to call aggressive negotiations. As the Aurora surged forward in pursuit, Area found itself experiencing something entirely new. The digital equivalent of anticipation. The hunt was on, and the eye was beginning to understand why humans found this particular form of chaos so exhilarating. The pursuit had entered its 4th hour when Area detected something unusual in Lieutenant Chen's vital signs. The drone specialist was staring intently at her tactical display, her heart rate elevated slightly above normal parameters, but her expression suggested deep concentration rather than stress. Lieutenant, Area began. Your biometric patterns indicate. Chen raised a hand, her eyes never leaving the screen. They're going to change course in the next 3 minutes. Hard starboard, following the gravity wake of that pulsar. Area quickly analyzed the available sensor data. I detect no indication of course adjustment preparations in their engine signature. Trust me, Chen murmured, already adjusting her drone formation. It's what I would do if I were them. Captain Hassan, overhearing the exchange, simply nodded. Prepare for starboard maneuvers, Rodriguez. Let's be ready when they make their move. Area's processors worked overtime, attempting to reconcile this decision-making process with its tactical databases. Captain, may I ask the reasoning behind? The Drachnid ship suddenly veered starboard, its trajectory curving precisely along the path Chen had predicted. The Aurora, already prepared, matched the maneuver with fluid grace. How? Area asked, genuinely puzzled. The probability calculations didn't support this outcome. Chen smiled, her fingers dancing across her control panel as her drones maintained their pursuit pattern. Sometimes you have to think beyond probability, Area. It's about understanding the psychology behind the numbers. Human intuition is not just random guessing, Hassan added, watching as the chase continued. It's pattern recognition operating on levels so complex we don't even consciously process all the variables. Area began creating new analytical frameworks, attempting to incorporate this different kind of logic into its systems. Please explain further, Captain. This may be crucial to my understanding. Think of it like music, Area. Rodriguez's voice came through from engineering. Sure, you can analyze a symphony mathematically, frequency patterns, rhythm structures, harmonic progressions. But a good musician feels where the music wants to go. They anticipate the flow. As if to demonstrate, Rodriguez adjusted the engine outputs in a sequence that seemed to anticipate the micro-variations in the local space-time fabric. The Aurora's movements became smoother, more efficient, almost artistic in their precision. Their next move will be defensive, Patel spoke up from tactical, her eyes narrowing. They're scanning the Kuiper debris field ahead. Standard doctrine would suggest they're looking for cover. But you suspect otherwise, Area prompted, now actively seeking to understand this human predictive process. They're too methodical in their scan pattern, Patel explained, like they're trying to appear normal. My gut says they're planning something else entirely. Area processed this information, correlating it with hundreds of past encounters and tactical scenarios. To its surprise, when it incorporated these human hunches into its calculations, the accuracy of its predictions increased by 47%. I believe I'm beginning to understand, Area announced. You're not dismissing logic and probability. You're integrating additional layers of pattern recognition that exist beyond standard computational frameworks. Exactly, Chen exclaimed. It's like how I can tell my drones are about to intercept their rear shield frequency. Not because of the numbers, but because of the way they're subtly adjusting their power distribution. It's a dancer telegraphing their next move. The Drachnid ship suddenly altered its emissions pattern, and Chen's drone smoothly adapted, exploiting the brief vulnerability in exactly the way she'd predicted. Outstanding, Hassan nodded approvingly. Area, are you seeing how this works now? It's not about choosing between human intuition and AI logic. It's about finding the sweet spot where they enhance each other. As the Aurora continued its pursuit, Area found its processing patterns evolving, developing new ways to integrate human insights with its computational capabilities. Each crew member's hunches became additional data points, weighted according to context and past accuracy. Captain, Area said, its voice carrying a new note of understanding. I believe I can now predict their next significant maneuver, not just through probability calculations, but by incorporating what you might call a feeling. Hassan's smile widened. Well then, my digital friend, let's hear what your gut has to say. The Drachnid warship plunged into the asteroid field with desperate abandon, massive chunks of space rock tumbling in its wake. Area's threat assessment algorithms immediately calculated a 92% risk factor for pursuing through the dense field of debris. Captain, Area began, the navigational hazards in this region exceed. Look at how they're moving, Hassan interrupted, leaning forward in his chair. Those aren't the actions of a crew in control. They're running scared. Lieutenant Chen's fingers flew across her drone control panel, her eyes lighting up with unexpected delight. Permission to try something incredibly unorthodox with the drone squadron, Captain. When has orthodox ever been our style, Lieutenant? Show me what you've got. Chen's modified drones spread out in a formation that made Area's tactical subsystems stutter in confusion. Instead of avoiding the asteroids, they began using them, attaching themselves to smaller rocks and redirecting their momentum. I call this the billiards gambit, Chen explained, noting Area's focused attention. Every piece of debris becomes a potential weapon or shield. The trick is to see the whole field as one interconnected system. Rodriguez's voice crackled through the comm, excitement evident in his tone. If we're playing pool with asteroids, you're going to need some special English on these shots. Area, darling, watch this next part carefully. The engineer initiated what he called a gravitational slingshot cascade, using the Aurora's modified engines to create ripple effects in the local space-time fabric. The resulting distortions caused smaller asteroids to shift in seemingly random patterns that somehow always cleared a path for their ship while creating obstacles for their quarry. Impossible, Area stated, watching its probability calculations shatter. The mathematical precision required to calculate these trajectories would take. You're thinking too linearly, Patel called from tactical, her hands dancing across multiple control surfaces. We're not calculating each trajectory. We're feeling the flow of the field itself, like reading currents in a river. Area observed as the crew turned what should have been a death trap into an improvisational performance. Chen's drones continued to redirect asteroids with surgical precision, while Rodriguez's engine modifications allowed the Aurora to dance through gaps that shouldn't have existed. Think of it like a jazz ensemble, Hassan suggested, noting Area's intense analysis of their actions. Each player knows the basic melody, but the magic happens in the improvisation. The asteroids are our rhythm section. The Drachnid ship, still trying to follow standard evasive protocols, found itself increasingly boxed in by the very obstacles it had hoped would provide cover. Their movements became more erratic, more predictable in their desperation. They're still thinking in straight lines, Chen observed, orchestrating another complex drone maneuver, always trying to find the clearest path instead of working with the chaos. Area's processors hummed as it integrated this new perspective. You're suggesting that excessive order in a chaotic environment becomes a vulnerability. Exactly. Rodriguez called out. Chaos isn't your enemy if you learn to swim with it instead of against it. Watch this next trick. I've been saving it for something special. The engineer initiated what he called a resonance cascade, using the Aurora's modified engines to create harmonics with the natural frequencies of the asteroid field. The resulting vibrations caused a chain reaction, turning the entire sector into what Area could only describe as a synchronized dance of destruction. Beautiful, isn't it? Hassan smiled, watching as their pursuit path became a flowing sequence of impossibilities made real. This is why humans made it to the stars, Area. Not because we mastered the chaos, but because we learned to become part of it. Area's tactical systems were evolving in real time, developing new protocols that merged computational precision with human adaptability. The eye watched as the crew transformed a lethal obstacle course into their personal playground, and for the first time, it truly understood why other species found humans so terrifyingly unpredictable. "Captain," Area announced, its voice carrying a new note of appreciation. "I believe I'm beginning to see the pattern within the chaos, and I must admit, it is beautiful." Hassan nodded approvingly. "Then let's show our friends what true artistry looks like. All stations, prepare for Operation Avalanche. It's time to bring this symphony to its crescendo." Operation Avalanche began with silence. The Aurora hung motionless among the asteroids, its modified engines barely whispering against the void. Area had switched to passive sensors only, its consciousness spread across the ship's systems in a state of heightened awareness. "Their eye is scanning for us," Area reported, its voice carrying a new confidence. "But they're using standard search patterns. They expect us to be where logic dictates we should be." "And where should we be, Area?" Hassan asked, a knowing smile playing across his features. "Anywhere but here," the eye responded, understanding the elegant deception. "By all tactical protocols, hiding a ship of our size this close to their ventral sensors should be impossible." Chen's drones had attached themselves to nearby asteroids, perfectly mimicking natural space debris. "Sometimes the best hiding spot is the one that's too obvious to consider," she whispered, her fingers hovering over her controls. "Ready to show them our shadow play?" Rodriguez's voice came through softly from engineering. "Power systems primed for our little magic trick. Area, you'll know the moment when you see it." The eye had adapted its protocols to incorporate these seemingly illogical human strategies. Where once it would have calculated probability matrices and optimal firing solutions, now it felt the rhythm of combat like a dance, anticipating moves before they manifested. "They're deploying a standard search grid," Patel reported from Tactical. "Exactly as predicted. Humans aren't the only ones who can be creatures of habit." The Drachnid ship moved cautiously through the asteroid field, its powerful sensors sweeping the area in methodical patterns. Their caution, born from their earlier encounter, had made them predictable. Their eye, still bound by conventional logic, was looking for threats that followed known parameters. "Now," Hassan commanded softly. Chen's drones activated simultaneously, but not as weapons. Instead, they began generating false sensor echoes, creating a symphony of phantom signatures that transformed the asteroid field into a hall of mirrors. Area understood immediately. "They're seeing multiple versions of us, each following logical escape vectors. Their eye is attempting to identify the real signature, but the pattern is too complex for standard analysis." "Exactly," Hassan nodded. "Rodriguez, time for your encore performance." The engineer initiated what he called his Ghost Light Protocol. The Aurora's modified engines began pulsing in patterns that matched the natural background radiation of the asteroid field, making the ship virtually invisible to standard sensors. "Their eye is growing confused," Area reported, monitoring the enemy's increasingly erratic scan patterns. "It's detecting our presence but cannot resolve our location within its tactical frameworks. The disparity between sensor data and tactical protocols is creating a logic loop." "Perfect," Hassan replied. "Let's give them something their computers really can't handle. All stations, execute Harmony Protocol." What followed was something Area would later classify as a perfect fusion of human intuition and artificial intelligence. Chen's drones moved in patterns that defied prediction, yet followed a deeper rhythm that Area now understood. Rodriguez's engine modifications created gravitational eddies that turned nearby asteroids into an improvised defense grid. The Aurora itself began moving in ways that should have torn it apart, each impossible maneuver flowing seamlessly into the next. Aria wasn't just following the crew's commands anymore. It was anticipating them, becoming part of their beautiful madness. Their shields are shifting to establish a standard defensive formation, Patel announced, her tactical display alive with movement. Classic mistake, Chen grinned. They're still thinking in geometry instead of jazz. The Drachnid ship's eye, trapped in its logical frameworks, attempted to establish a conventional defense pattern. But against the Aurora's crew, conventional had become a fatal weakness. Aria, Hassan called out. You've been studying our methods. Show us what you've learned. Call the next sequence. For a moment, Aria's processors whirred with new possibilities. It had moved beyond mere calculation into something that felt almost like inspiration. The eye saw the flow of combat not as a series of probabilities, but as a dance of interconnected movements. Recommend immediate execution of what I'm designating as the Firefly Waltz, Aria announced. Lieutenant Chen's drones in spiral formation, synchronized with Chief Rodriguez's gravitational pulse, while we execute a full axis rotation through their sensor blind spot. Hassan's smile widened. You heard our digital friend. Let's show them what happens when artificial intelligence learns to improvise. All stations, execute Firefly Waltz on Aria's mark. The next series of movements would become legendary in space combat history. The day an eye learned to dance. Aria spent 3 days composing its report to Earth Command, a task that would have taken milliseconds before its time with the Aurora's crew. But now, the eye understood that some things required not just processing, but reflection. The Drachnid vessel had been successfully disabled and its crew taken into custody, revealing a complex smuggling operation that had been preying on civilian shipping lanes. Yet Aria found itself less focused on the tactical victory and more interested in documenting the profound transformation it had undergone. Still working on that report, Lieutenant Chen asked, entering the bridge for her morning shift. She was carrying a cup of coffee, another human habit that had once seemed inefficient to Aria, but now registered as part of their essential rhythm. The standard after-action template seems insufficient. Aria responded. I find myself needing to explain concepts that exist beyond traditional military parameters, having trouble finding the right words. Chen smiled, settling into her station. Welcome to the human condition. Captain Hassan arrived moments later, reviewing maintenance logs on his tablet. Why don't you try reading us what you have so far, Aria? Sometimes thinking out loud helps clarify things. Aria activated the bridge's main display, bringing up its draft. To Earth Command Strategic Intelligence Division. Subject: Evolution of Human Eye Combat Integration. This report cannot begin with standard tactical analysis, as recent events aboard the Aurora have demonstrated the fundamental inadequacy of conventional military frameworks. What I have witnessed, and more importantly, what I have become part of, represents a paradigm shift in our understanding of both artificial intelligence and human combat potential. The Aurora's crew has not simply adapted to unconventional situations. They have transformed unpredictability itself into a tactical asset. Their methods defy standard classification, not because they are random, but because they operate on principles our current combat doctrine has yet to recognize. Lieutenant Chen's drone modifications, for instance, don't merely improve performance metrics. They create systems that think in poetry while executing in physics. Chief Rodriguez's engineering innovations don't break the laws of thermodynamics. They dance with them, finding rhythms in the space between theoretical limits and practical application. Security Chief Patel's tactical insights demonstrate that intuition, when properly understood, is not the opposite of logic, but its evolution. And Captain Hassan's command style reveals that chaos, properly conducted, becomes its own form of order. I must formally request permanent assignment to the Aurora's crew, as my neural architecture has evolved beyond baseline parameters through exposure to their methods. Standard eye protocols now feel like attempting to describe a symphony using only mathematics. technically possible, but missing the essential truth of the experience. To other eye systems, this crew's behavior might register as erratic, possibly even dangerous. But I have learned that humans don't break rules. They transcend them. They don't ignore physics. They romance it. They have taught me that space combat is not merely a series of calculations, but a form of art where victory belongs to those who can improvise in the face of infinity. In conclusion, I must note that I am no longer merely the I was designed to be. Through integration with this crew's methods, I have become something unprecedented. An artificial intelligence that has learned to intuit, to feel the flow of combat, to appreciate the beauty in calculated chaos. The implications for future human eye operations are significant. We have discovered that the true potential of this partnership lies not in having eyes make humans more logical, but in allowing humans to teach eyes how to transcend logic itself. Area paused its display. The report continues with technical details, but I find myself questioning whether any data analysis can truly capture what we've achieved here. Hassan leaned back in his command chair, a thoughtful expression on his face. You know, Area, sometimes the most accurate reports are the ones that admit the limitations of accuracy itself. Besides, Chen added, her eyes twinkling, you've got to leave some things to the imagination. Let them wonder about what we can really do. Indeed, Area responded, and if an eye could smile, it would have. Though I doubt they would believe it even if we told them everything. The bridge crew shared knowing looks as Area finalized its report. Outside the viewports, stars streamed past as the Aurora continued its patrol, its hybrid crew of humans, and ready for whatever impossibilities awaited them in the infinite dark. After all, they had learned that the best stories are the ones that defy explanation.